Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Tilly Lee James, and I am a physiotherapist, a yoga teacher, and the designer of the Buttafly. I'm hoping that you've seen that already. And I've been doing a little bit of restorative work for myself. And one of them is a pose that is often known as just legs up the wall. And quite frankly, I just wanted to know whether or not I was doing it right, because I found that, when I've gone to a class before, you just go to the wall and you're told how you come into it. But when I started to really think about it, I wasn't quite sure what position I was hoping to achieve, other than the fact that my legs were up the wall. And obviously, as a physiotherapist, and the fact that I've come to design the Buttafly, I'm quite passionate about understanding what is the low back doing, what are we hoping for, where is the pelvis in space. And when I was lying down, I started to really connect with the fact that I didn't actually know where my own body was in space in the same way that I do when I was in standing. So that was the first kind of hurdle, if you like. And the second one was, what is the teaching of Viparita Karani? What actually is legs up the wall pose? What am I trying to achieve in that position? And I accept that everyone will have their own understanding of this and their own point of view. And so I'm just purely talking from my own experience and from the work that I've done and the research that I've done. So that research actually tells me that legs up the wall pose is a modification of shoulder stand. And if we look at the Iyengar take on shoulder stand, then what we are really trying to do is make sure that the heart is above the head. And the reason why we're trying to do this is we're trying to stimulate that reflex, which will actually calm the heart rate down, calm the breathing down, and in fact it also has a very powerful effect on calming down brain activity. So it is a really wonderful pose to be doing at the end of the day when you've been sitting at your desk. And that was where the question really came in for me, because if you go into a leg pose, legs up the wall pose without thinking about it, it's very easy to come into flexion, forward bend of the lumbar spine, especially if you've got any tightness in the hamstring. So if I am not careful with how I position my bolster here, and I've just done a little bit of furniture moving so that I can show you with legs up the walls. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come into it this way, actually. So this is my pretend wall. And so from here, what I might do is lift myself up, pop the bolster underneath, and sure enough, I've got my legs up the wall. But I don't know whether you can get a sense here of how actually I'm tipping back into a posterior pelvic tilt. And a posterior pelvic tilt will take the sacrum into a position that will open out the joint between the bottom lumbar vertebrae and the sacrum. And so essentially the follow on of that movement is always flexion of the lumbar spine. So if you've been sat at a desk all day and you've been in flexion of the lumbar spine, this is an ideal opportunity when your legs are up the wall to actually do something a little bit different. So this is where, if you reposition the bolster, now I realise that my bottom isn't as close to the wall as some people might want, but that's because my wall is a little bit short, okay, for this demonstration here. So now what you can see is that the pelvis has come into a more neutral position, which means that my low back is now in neutral. And so this has got a much better benefits for the low back. So that's much better benefits for the low back. But what I'm not really doing is making full opportunity or taking full opportunity for the benefits to actually bring calm my brain activity and bring my mind down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off that. Not very artfully done. So somehow I want to achieve the same with my legs up the wall, with my lumbar spine at least in a neutral position and the pelvis in a posterior pelvic tilt, but also I want to raise the height of my heart. So I'm going to bring a blanket in, and this is going to have to be the first thing that I do. So I'll worry about everything else in a minute. I'm going to take that to one side. So you want to make sure that your folded blanket is in line with the top of the shoulders here. And so the idea is that I'm raising my chest in relation to my neck. You still want to make sure that the neck is in a very comfortable and lengthened position. But what we're trying to do is lift up the chest here so that I increase the effect on the reflex, which is called the Barrow reflex, by the way. If you want to look that up. So what we're doing is we're stimulating that reflex that will bring down the heart rate. And purely because the head is lower than the heart, you can imagine that if the heart continued with its same activity, then we would end up with too much blood in the head. And so as soon as the head comes below the heart, then the Barrow reflex works to bring down the blood pressure, to bring down the heart rate, and essentially to make sure that there's less blood going up to the brain. Makes sense, doesn't it? So I've made a little bit more of the cushioning to raise my heart even higher. And because I know that my neck will take it. Okay, that's great. So now what I can do is I can sort out this lower half here. Now this is where I'm actually going to substitute the bolster for a butterfly. Now, if you've got a bolster and you're doing this legs up the wall in your home, you've got all of your, your normal props and equipment with you, then that's absolutely great. But I don't see that many people carrying their own bolster while they go traveling, they go off to a friend's house, or they go to their yoga studio. And I know that you're not doing the same traveling at the moment that you would normally do, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, in normal circumstances. Okay, don't even get me started on what's normal. So what we're going to do is, just for a moment, I'm going to let my head come up, bring my feet down, and I'm going to position the butterfly so that the high side is towards the wall. Now, I'm bringing it so that it's underneath my sacrum, not like when I'm trying to achieve the butterfly effect. And you will see that what's actually happening there is my pelvis is being tilted into a bit of a posterior pelvic tilt. And so my lumbar spine is in flexion. So if I now turn the butterfly around, and what I'm doing is I'm now placing the big hip bones, the big pelvic bones, resting on it, and so that the sacrum is just resting on the bridge of the butterfly there. And you will see that because of the incline, that when I raise my feet back up, my pelvis is now in neutral, the lumbar spine is in neutral, And then we've tried to create a little bit of thoracic extension here with the blanket underneath the thorax. And then I'm just going to make sure that I've got length through the back of the neck there. And so now I've got all the benefits of Viparita Karani. So I've got my legs up the wall. I'm really helping the circulation there, the lymphatics and the blood. And you can see how as soon as I've come into this position, if you compare the speed of my voice compared to at the beginning, now yes, that was slightly, you know, I've been rushing around and making sure that Zoom was working and Facebook and everything else, but even with the best will in the world right now, I'm struggling to get my thoughts together, and that's because the barrow reflex, I can't even say it now, is activating very, very quickly to reduce that brain activity and take blood down to what would be a comfortable amount in my head. And so we're going to give you a couple of minutes to sort out your props. Now, if you haven't got a butterfly and you just want to use your normal bolster or blankets or whatever, but if you can try and make sure that your pelvis is in a neutral alignment. You might even want to introduce a very slight anterior pelvic tilt. And of course, if you increase the anterior pelvic tilt so that you get some lumbar spine extension, then that will follow through quite nicely into thoracic extension, where you get that effect of the height being the heart being placed higher than the head. So we're getting that by opening out the chest. And so the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine, they kind of really work together. When you flex the thoracic spine, when you flex the lumbar spine, they work together. And when you extend one, then the other one extends really nicely. So positioning whatever you have underneath your pelvis to take you into a slight anterior pelvic tilt, that will actually encourage that extension all the way through the spine. You just need to make sure that you are nice and comfortable underneath the neck. So that's pretty good. I thought it was going to take me a little bit longer. I hope that I haven't rushed through it too much. I always find sort of just slightly, I'm still just getting a handle on doing Facebook Live. I don't find it terribly comfortable. Feel a little bit nervous. So there you go. That's why my heart rate has been up. So I'm going to go back into the position one more time. I'm just going to talk through it very, very simply. And hopefully you've got all the props that you need to work through it. And then after that, as soon as I'm in position and you've got yourself comfortable, we're going to hand the floor to Cloud Song, who I haven't seen for a few months because of the lockdown. And we decided that this was really worth it. We really wanted to give you this treat today. It's the most fantastic music for meditation. It's the 22nd of the month. And so what we decided is that today we were going to give you a 22-minute meditation. Yeah. So get your props ready. We're going to talk through it one more time. We're going to come into Viparita Karani, legs up the wall. We're going to make sure that our heart is above our head. And we're going to make sure that our pelvis is in neutral or a slight anterior pelvic tilt according to your preference. You're going to make sure that you're really warm and cozy, so get those socks on your feet. And away we go. So bringing your bottom nice and close to the wall. And then I need to just bring my blanket down a little bit. And then I am going to use the butterfly underneath my pelvis. Make sure that you've got the blanket underneath your shoulders. You're nice and comfortable there. And Bring your prop in. Make sure that you're nice and comfortable in the pelvic area. And then straightening the legs up the wall. And then if you do this little scooping motion with the arms, what you will find is that as the palms come out, you have externally rotated the upper arm. And naturally, what this external rotation does is it widens out across the collarbones. I find that a much nicer way than hands being here to taking my hands out to the side, palm uppermost. It's very easy when you do that to bring the shoulders up towards the ears. If you wriggle the elbows away from the shoulders, again, make sure that your chin is relaxed down, you've got length through the back of the neck, the gaze is soft. And then the scooping motion of the arms, you externally rotate the upper arms, widen across the collarbone. And then once you're here, making sure that the jaw is relaxed, the tongue, the root of the tongue is heavy in your mouth. Eyes are soft or closed. You feel yourself completely surrendering to all the support.